Section 2.5, more on graphing linear equations. The x-intercept of a graph is the point at which the graph crosses the x-axis. To find the x-intercept, we'll call it A, the point A, comma 0. Let y equal 0, because you have A 0, so y 0, and solve for x. The y-intercept of a graph is the point at which the graph crosses the y-axis. To find the y-intercept, 0b, let x equal 0 and solve for y. I want to point out that if you have a graph and you can think of any point on the x-axis, this might be the point 1, comma 0. This might be the point 2, comma 0. What's this next point? 3, comma 0. So every single point on the x-axis has in common that the y value is 0. So that's why to find the x-intercept, you let y be 0. And by the same token, every single point on the y-axis has what in common? This might be the point 0, negative 1. This might be the point 0, positive 1. This other point might be the point 0, 2. Every single point on the y-axis has in common that x is 0. So if you want to find the x-intercept, we will let y equal 0. 2x minus 4 times 0 equals 12. 2x equals 12. X equals 6. So the x-intercept is the point 6, 0. How about the y-intercept? If you want to find the y-intercept, you let x be 0. 2 times 0 minus 4y equals 12. So minus 4y equals 12. Divide both sides by minus 4. And you get y is a negative 3. So our y-intercept is the point 0, negative 3. We can use those two intercepts to graph our line. Let's put that 6, 0 on the graph. Let's put our 0, negative 3 on the graph. How many points does it take to determine a line? 2. We found the x and the y-intercept, and then we graphed them, and now we know where our line is. Graph using the slope and y-intercept. So when you're graphing using the slope and the y-intercept, the first thing you're going to start with is the y-intercept. So we know it's the point 0, 2, and we know that the slope is negative 3/4. So it's going downhill. So 0, 2 is approximately here. And we're going to go down 3. We will go over 4. And that gives us our next point. So our line should go through those 2 points. And notice the line's going downhill. Let's do this second example problem. We have f of x equals 2x minus 5. That's the same thing as saying y equals 2x minus 5. It's just using our function notation. We'll begin our graph with our y-intercept, which is the point 0, negative 5, and then we will use our slope, which is 2. We'll think of that as 2 over 1. So we start with 0, negative 5, and we rise by 2, and we run by 1. It's a positive slope, So our line is going uphill. And that's approximately where our line is. Horizontal and vertical lines. Some equations have graphs that are parallel to one of the axes. This happens when either a or b is 0 in the equation ax plus by equals c. These equations have a missing variable. That is, there is only one variable in the equation. So if you have the equation y equals negative 3, you can think about that on a t-chart. Y is negative 3. What is x? Well, it doesn't seem to matter. Y is negative 3, whether x is 0, 1, 2, 10, or 20. So we have the points 0, negative 3, 1, negative 3, 2, negative 3. That is a horizontal line. Horizontal lines will always be of a certain form. Y equals some value. What about x equals 2? X is 2. It's always 2. What is y? Doesn't matter. X is always 2. So we have the point 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, negative 1, 2, 2, 2, anything. It is a vertical line, and vertical lines will always be of the form x equals some value. So the graph of y equals b, or f of x equals b, is a horizontal line with y-intercept 0b. The slope is 0. It has no slant at all. It's just going straight across. The graph of x equals a is a vertical line that through the point a, 0. The slope is undefined. It is not the graph of a function. So if we think about a vertical line, the slope is undefined. It's not a function because it fails the vertical line test. Think about that slope. If you tilt that slope ever so slightly in a clockwise direction, you might get that the slope is a very large positive number, like positive 10. What if you tilt the line ever so slightly counterclockwise? Then you might get a very large negative slope. So you might get that m is like negative 10 or 20 or 30. So what's happening when it's exactly vertical? How does it go from being a very large negative number to a very large positive number? What's happening in between? At that point, it's undefined. It just doesn't make sense. It is so slanted that it does not make sense. So what about parallel and perpendicular lines? Vertical lines are parallel. Two non-vertical lines are parallel if they have the same slope and different y-intercepts. That makes sense. Two non-vertical lines are perpendicular if the product of their slopes is -1. To find the slope of a line perpendicular to a given line, we take the opposite reciprocal of the given line's slope. Lines are also perpendicular if one of them is, what's that hint? X equals A. X equals A. What kind of line is that? That's a vertical line. If one of them is vertical and one of them is y equals b, horizontal. Horizontal. So a vertical and a horizontal line are perpendicular. So let's determine whether the graphs of these two lines are parallel. If they are parallel, they must have the same slopes. So what are the slopes of these two lines? The second line is easy to see. that the slope is 1/2. What's the slope of the first line? Well, I don't know. We need to put it in slope-intercept form before we can determine what the slope is. We need to solve for y. Let's first subtract x from both sides. We get minus x plus 4. And then we have to divide everything by a -2. So that gives us y equals 1/2 x minus 2. So the slope of this line is also 1/2. Notice that this line, the first line, has a y-intercept of -1. The second line has a y-intercept of +1. So the y-intercepts are different. The slopes are the same. So are they parallel? Yes. They are parallel. Determine whether the graphs of these two lines are perpendicular. So we need to know what their slopes are. The second one, once again, is easy because it's in slope-intercept form. We can tell that the slope is -5/4. What is the slope of the first line? Don't know. We need to solve for y. 4x minus 5y equals 6. Let's subtract 4x from both sides, and we get minus 5y equals minus 4x plus 6. Let's divide everything by a -5, and we get y equals positive 4/5 x minus 6/5. So our slopes are, our slope to our second one then is m equals 4/5. Now, we have two slopes. We have 4/5 and -5/4. Those two slopes are opposite reciprocals. One's positive, one's negative. You take one fraction, you flip it, you get the other. So these two lines are perpendicular. Yes, they are perpendicular. And if you multiply 4/5 times -5/4, look what happens. The 4's cancel, the 5's cancel, you have a negative, so you get a -1. When you multiply their slopes together, you get a -1. That's the end of this section, and if you want to see the next section, you'll have to move on to the next video.